Let's continue with the demonstration of the new version of RadCORE. Let's talk now about Lucape Dinatico. Lucap Dynamic is one of the most useful resources you will find among all the benefits that RadCORE offers you. Here we have the customer record, where you will be able to see some fields that contain a magnifying glass next to that field. These are search fields. They are common fields that every application needs to link to some information from a secondary table. As an example, on the customer registration screen, I have the states register here. So by clicking on the magnifying glass button here, it will open a search window for me where I can type in the state that I want to locate and select within my application. This one is an example, as we saw, which opens a small window with sensitive typing. In this example here, I created a dynamic lookup search for my list of cities, and it will be filtered through the state that I selected previously. I will click here on my magnifying glass, and then it will make a list of all the cities that belong to the state from Ceará. These are two very simple examples, but let's imagine at a coding level what is necessary for you to carry out these lookup searches. In a conventional situation, you will create resources within your application to be able to display a panel or display an external form so that it has a query that performs the search you are carrying out now. You will notice that unlike the state search, the city search, in addition to allowing search by city description, it also brought me here the code of the city that I selected, which I can also type in any code in this field, and it will search for the code. That is, I don't need to click on the Luca. I can also search directly here for the code.
Okay.
And you are still observing, unlike the state register, you notice the plus button here next to the city register. What is that? Normally, we visually indicate this plus icon with a little button to inform the user that if they cannot find the record they are searching for here, they can click on this button and a window will appear to register the information they need. So all these details that we are seeing in this lookup example are common situations in any application. And you think about the amount of code you normally apply to do a lookup search. DELPHI VCL, like UNIGUI, has component versions to do lookup searches where you normally fill in about 5 properties, you need a query, you need a data source to be able to do this search, and obviously you have to code everything. So you can imagine a situation like this example we are seeing, where I have a lookup for the default address, a lookup for the default city with code search, with dynamic registration, another lookup for the delivery address status, as well as the city of delivery. Another lookup for billing status, as well as billing city. And I'm going to have some more here, a search for the financial manager, more lookup with more advanced details. So here on this screen, I only have 7 dynamic lookups. Can you imagine the amount of code you normally have to do to create all these searches with all the filters we saw here? In detail, I'm going to do a demonstration that I hadn't done before. I'm going to clear my state field here and try to select the city. An alert message appears asking me to select a state so I can select a city. Here, as we had selected previously, it was registered on the screen. This would not be a conventional situation to occur. Okay, we are just demonstrating. So after selecting the state, it allows me to search for the city normally. In addition to this conditional that we just saw, you can see that when I select a city, I am automatically bringing the IBGE code here.
Tá?
So the IBGE code is a coding here in Brazil, which is linked to each city so that we can issue tax documents. So here we have several resources that Dynamic Lookup P involves within your application with the sole objective of reducing your work, reducing your coding, and speeding up the development of your application. Let's see how RadCORE offers this feature to bring you so many benefits. I'm going to open my customer record here, and let's first see my state lookup and city lookup. The first thing we are going to observe right away is what component is being involved here. It is UnitBedit, a native component of UniGui. But you stop to think, but how? I'm seeing only UnitB edit for the city, for the state, but here from the rendering I'm seeing search button for the state. For the city, I'm looking beyond the search button, add button, and also field for code search. How is that? If I'm only seeing 2 on the screen, it's single. Well, folks, so this is what RadCORE does for you. Let's open our Ars Elementis and let's see what the content of the status search is. Look how interesting it is. Here I have the word description and I have the term code UF. And I have a wildcard, which is an exclamation. Let's understand what is being done here by the RadCORE. Firstly, I'm telling the RadCORE that this field of mine is called LKP-ED lookup, UFS. This field of mine, this DB edit of mine, it will be dynamic lookup. So this prefix ED LKP is telling RadCORE that this field here, this component, will be transformed into a dynamic lookup. And the table that will be searched by this dynamic NUC is the UFS table. So the nomenclature of the field that normally every NUC when we create it, we already out of obligation put some nomenclature for it. You will put a nomenclature that is a logical nomenclature, an obvious nomenclature for the RadCORE. And then saying that it will be in the cap and that it will search the UFS table. And what will be searched for in the UFS table? The description field that exists in the UFS table will be searched. When selecting state, I want the primary key of the UFS table, which RadCORE will automatically detect. I want it to be written to the UF code field that belongs to who. To our customer record. So guys, within these terms that I presented are usually the parameters, the conventional lookup properties that you create in an application. But we have more details. Here, I don't need to identify my social date, okay? And I don't need to specify my data field. So you reduce the level of work you will employ, so to speak, to develop your lookup as quickly as possible. So let's see. If I observe that my properties do not have any associated data source, and I do not have any associated data field. So this is work for the hardcore. He will do it for you dynamically. That was the first detail. Later we will explain what this exclamation means. We will see some other details. Well then, within this category, we looked at how to do dynamic lookup with RadCORE. Simple dynamic lookup. Now, let's see how the dynamic city lookup was created, which, as you can see, has a much broader level of detail and resources because it has a code search, it has a conventional search, and it has dynamic registration. So it has a lot more details. But let's see what RadCORE offered here, so we don't have to code anything. So let's not be scared at first sight.
Okay.
What do we have here? The same pattern. Initially, the nomenclature of my lookup e.lkp cdots. What we learned, e.lkp is the city's prefix, the table that will be searched. Description, the field in the city's table that will be displayed for us to make the selection. Code city is the field in which, when selecting a description of the city, I will receive from the customer registry, I will receive the primary key from the description that we selected. The joker at followed number 60 is telling me here exactly what we saw here. I want to search for the primary key of my cities table. That's what the arroba does. The numeral 60 is just telling me here that I'm wanting to create this search field with 60 pixels. So this is the @ parameter 60. Our exclamation, which we saw just now in the UFS lookup, is just to say that I want to do the small screen search. What is small screen search? It's this little screen that we saw just now, which is the research that comes on top of our selected field. There are other search fields that we will see later, which will be the lookup on the modal screen. That's the difference, and that's what will execute the exclamation wildcard. We are now using the wildcard more. This joker is responsible for doing all this here. In addition to rendering the button, it makes the call to the form that is linked to this search all dynamically. And the modal parameter that we are informing here indicates that this search, that this registration, will not be opened here. It will be opened in a modal way. That's what the name itself says. Now the search all parameter, so you can see the number of resources that we can associate in Nandu's lookup. Social will allow me to do a search in all the fields that exist in this lookup. Like this. Didn't I say that the search would be by description? Yes, but we are down here. We are placing additional filters here.
Nice. Tá?
So right here, I'm saying to my lookup that I want to do a search in addition to the description, in addition to the code. I want to do a search for the IBGE code field.
Yeah.
It's true? So in this way, search all, in addition to allowing me to search by the city's sequential code by the city's description, will also allow me to search by the IBGE code. How does it work? So I have my research here. You will see that the description column and the BGE code column appeared.
Ok? Então,
So if I type, for example, 2300-200 here, it will filter for me using the IBGE code. so I didn't need to do any coding.
Aplicação.
I just indicated some attributes to hard code, so it can assemble all this code dynamically.
Rica.
Remembering, guys, that you will observe how I'm going to memorize all these attributes. You don't need to worry about that. I'm going to delete it from the screen just to demonstrate to you how it works. So I'm going to put the lookup filter here, press the colon, and I'm going to ask RadCORE to complete it. We already saw this in the previous video. I'm going to press 3 and see what RadCORE does for us. It adds all the lookup filter syntax. So now you will just make the necessary adjustments to create a dynamic filter within RadCORE. Okay, so let me put our previous nomenclature back. Guys, there are a lot of resources. As I said, this video will be specific to lookup.
Tá?
So you can see that even the message we used to make the selection, to warn that I did not select a UF. Let's review it here. This message, select a UF, it can be translated by RC Translate. So hardcode even offers you that. You will configure a message, but this message can be configured by RC Translate so that it is displayed in the language the user is working in. We will see more details about this in the RadCORE documentation. We are trying to focus only on showing the breadth that dynamic lookup can offer in developing lookup fields in your application. So we have a lot more features, but what we're going to talk about now are the improvements, so you can see how RadCORE can always offer more. I just showed you a series of features that are fantastic, but we're bringing more news. So the first one is that lookup light, which is exactly what we just saw through the exclamation mark. It will now prevent external clicking.
Tá?
So let's see what that's like. Previously, in previous versions of hardcode, if I opened lookup light as it is not modal, hardcode allowed me to click on objects that are out of reach. Now, as you can see, I won't be able to click the buttons anymore. If I click on anything outside of my range here, it will close my lookup.
Ok? Então,
This is one of the benefits that dynamic lookup is bringing. Sushal, as I just demonstrated to you, is a new feature in version 6.0. There was only one change of name for sush only.
only. Tá?
What is sush only?
Only. Bom,
We did a demonstration here of a lookup that is linked to CRUD. It is linked to registration.
ok? Bom,
I will be able to create lookup searches with RadCORE. Let me open our demo forms here.
vários. Ok, ó.
This form is not CRUD, but I can create dynamic lookup searches with it. Here's where we can use the search only attribute. It allows me to do research on the cap, but without being CRUD. So I can do this with any situation within my application.
Ok?
Let's go. We have more news, such as the getPK attribute. These are situations proposed by a RadCORE user. We will understand this better in the documentation. I won't describe it now because the video will be very long, but it is a very useful resource for when we are doing research in tables that have a composite primary key.
Ok?
Well, it will also be possible to indicate a return field that is not the table's primary key. So we'll be able to do this all here with getPK. There was an adjustment to the joins, and we will see how the joins work within the dynamic lookup.
Seguindo,
Following our same example here of the customer record, I will have it linked to my customer record here. I have some examples of master detail records. So I'm going to open my review record here.
tá?
So I'll change my review record here, and you'll see that I have a vehicle search lookup here. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to be able to search for the vehicle and make this selection, just like we just naturally saw the dynamic lookup searches that we demonstrated in the customer register. Now let's see what interesting RadCORE is doing here. Okay guys, I'm going to close our lookup here, or our detail, and let's obviously observe how the code works. So my review record, I'll have my lookup here. I'll open my RC element here and see what's new here.
Tá?
Well, first understand, this is all in the RadCORE documentation.
Ok? Então,
So what am I saying here to my RadCORE? I want to do a search with join on a third table. That is, I'm involving my customers reviews table, I'm involving my cars table, and I am involving my vehicles table. In a conventional situation, this is the lookup with join that RadCORE offers. When you make this instruction, RadCORE will automatically generate this query for you at runtime. It generates a dynamic query. So I'm telling the RadCORE that I want to do car description research, but it involves this whole process here. Now you will be able to pass RadCORE. In addition to being able to make your dynamic queries, you will be able to manually pass your own query to RadCORE. You will only need to follow the RadCORE standard to use the tap alias and the table PK parameter.
cá.
But you will be able to create your own join query, compound search, and you will be able to move to RadCORE now through the lookup query attribute.
Mais
More resources to further expand the potential of dynamic lookups. Okay? Well, let's continue here with our details.
uh,
The lookup filter I just explained to you. Now you will also be able to specify literally, okay?
então,
So here in our customer record, I'm going to get back to it. Okay, guys? I had left a comment right next door and ended up forgetting to mention it when we opened, but that's okay.
você
You can see here that my filter I'm passing is filtering by the text content of the add LKPF field. That is, what I select here is what it will filter here. But if you are not filtering by field, you will now be able to use the explicit instruction of the content you want to compare. So I will be able to replace this expression with this expression. In other words, I will not link the screen component, but rather the string itself or the entire content itself. So you will now be able to do this with dynamic lookup as well. Okay? Guys, to finish, because the lookup video really got longer, but to finish our lookup topic for the moment, we're going to close here and we're going to show a new lookup demo that RadCORE 6 will bring with more benefit. Until the previous version of RadCORE, lookups required that your lookup table's primary key be an integer key. With RadCORE 6.0, this limitation is now gone, folks. So I will now be able to do searches with tables that have big int in the primary key, tables that have string in the primary key, tables that have a date, or better said timestamp, and a series of other features, including a new visual lookup model. So So I'll be able to do it here so you can see a key with big int. Okay? It's happening here as a result. A table that has the primary key, a string, a table that will have our date time field. This field here only had the date, so it only brought one piece of information. So you will have these two benefits. I will be able to search using the composite key and bring back results that are different from the primary key. And our new lookup layout, which was a hardcore user request. This lookup has very striking features.
Tá?
These are characteristics that will make it different. First, it doesn't have a search button. You will necessarily type something, okay? So I'm going to press the letter A here,
ok?
and then it will automatically open the search below.
Tá?
Our add button will also no longer bring it here. The second model, he will be here at the end of the research.
Ok?
And when you select some content, you will now see that it will show us a little rubbish, okay? And the field becomes read-only. I can no longer operate with this field. If I want to make any changes to this field, I ask for it to be deleted. So this is the new dynamic lookup layout and all the new features that Lucaco Dynamic is bringing in version 6.0. Thanks for more video, and see you next time. So, what am I saying here to the hardcore?